Hello everyone, welcome along to the All Things TechIE Podcast. We are in AV on Air studio. It's a different type of vibe of a studio. They turned it a different way. They've coloured it a different approach to previous, but thanks to the Midwich group for hosting us on this podcast. We are talking about something which is close to home for me, and I think for my guests today, it's definitely close to them as well. Lewis and Greg. Lewis, first of all, introduce yourself to the podcast.
Hi, I'm Lewis Shevelan. I work for King's College London as one of the AV supervisors there.
And Greg.
I'm Greg Jeffries. I'm involved in AVIXA standards, have been for many years. I'm a specialist consultant in areas that overlap with this, and I also have an interest in a company called Visual Displays. So that's me.
So what we're talking about is something that before Christmas, probably mid-2025, a couple of webinars. Myself and Lewis were at SCOMD up in Belfast. We were talking about it over a drink, and we could talk all night about this. I know you have a cut-off point at 11 o'clock there, Greg, but this is about getting a standard in place for higher education as a starting point for accessibility in AV. You took it. You really took the bull by the horns, Lewis, and actually ran with it.
Yeah. So this was in discussion with my one of my superiors, Rodrigo. We were talking about accessibility and the different options, and he suggested that I take this particular project on. He said, approach AVIXA, get yourself. He's got the contacts there. He can talk to the people. He knows how to create a standard as it is. So he put me in touch with the right people, and we've been working ever since. So it starts off with like an environmental scan, and we get the lay of the land and see what AVIXA thinks. So that's where we're at the moment.
And that's where we bring in Greg. So you've been involved with this standard and trying to get it written up.
Well, so one thing I've got to say, right up front here is I can't speak for the standards group. I'm back on the steering committee now. I was chairing it during the pandemic for 3 years, which was a very interesting experience, and I've been involved with it off and on all the way through. But I think that in general with AVIXA, we recognise that there's a need for a number of standards, and then how things bubble up to the top is more a question of practical and sort of tactical issues. But what you've done is apart from saying it's very, very impressive, but it's, if you like, it's an example where in a way you start to do these things. You have a bit of imposter syndrome, and you think, well, can I do this? But the reality is, whichever your specialism is or your interest, somebody's got to do it, and in a way you're creating the subject as you do it, which has been my experience.
The industry support for this has been absolutely phenomenal.
Super.
Everyone I talk to is like, bring more of this, more, please, more, and they're
do you know
really
what? And
supportive.
they do talk about it
a
lot, because even from us having that conversation way back in Belfast, we knew that there is that industry interest. Like you will now, I'm going to go down that rabbit hole of going, what has been put in place for the standard? What we can't narrow it down too much. What we do know is that it's going to be for higher ed first. Okay.
Yeah.
But when people think about accessibility, a lot of people think about the physical disabilities. Now, I have an autistic son, and many of the listeners and viewers know about that. And that's where my vested interest in hidden disabilities are, with autistic or neurodiverse people, ADHD or so forth, right? A lot of the accessibility that the neurotypical people and people that are not really inside the disability circle will just think, okay, so you're going to put in a wheelchair ramp into a room. We need to get away from that image.
Absolutely. That's when you start looking around and you dig into the available resources. A lot of it is to do with the size of doorways, the wheelchair ramps, and those are very important things. But AV is about delivering information across, and it's about making sure. I want the standard to ensure that every single person in that room receives an equitable amount of information from, like, it's...
And proper education.
And proper education. Yeah. If the teacher doesn't have to think about, like, how they use the room, and everybody just understands or receives the information in whatever way is best for them, then education flows smoother, everybody is lifted up by it, and that's the whole point of the AV.
So I'll go down, how big is the standard?
How big is the standard? So this is where the imposter syndrome thing comes in. I have to hold my hands up with all of it and go, look, I'm fairly fresh to the industry, I'm fairly fresh to a lot of things, so I don't have the knowledge to be able to define it fully, but my original proposal was standardizing what level of technology would be in the room, at what stage the design would include thoughts on accessibility. It's very open-ended, and I'm leaving it mostly to the AVIXA committee because they have that level of knowledge.
And that's where I bring Greg in, because, you know, when you're writing standards, even when you're writing, and when I've talked to Chuck and some of the exam team of AVIXA, you have to, because it's global, you have to be, so you can't be overly specific. You can't just talk about one product, one brand. And it's very difficult to just say, right, we want to have, maybe we can define it as, we would like the voice lift to a certain decibels. We would like the screens to a certain lumens. Is that the approach that we can?
So I think the way I'd make the connection here is that most of our standards, or to put it personally, most of the standards that I've been involved with are about performance standards. So you could look at them, if you like, in the context of one of our new standards of user experience, where you're trying to define what a good outcome is, express that in the form of hard metrics. But the point about it is that it's brand and technology agnostic. Yeah. That, you know, what I think one, you know, we, you know, you're talking, you come from a higher ed context, and you know, when I was participating in the last LTSMG conference, the theme there was doing more with less. Yeah. So you've got like a massive reality check of, okay, well, people was gonna vote for a sunny day, aren't they? But getting to that point is another question. So I think that it's, you know, what you're talking about is to be able to describe what an experience should be. But you know, if you start to talk about a standard, very often, like a manufacturer will get very excited because their prospect was, oh, how can I get, you know, our product so that it's kind of embedded in it? Yes. And for me, it's very important to invert the whole thing and take it from the user experience, the user requirement, you know, backwards.
Yes.
It's a reverse engineering thing.
It is really reverse engineering. Does the standard go into, like, the size of the room, or how did you work that end of things of, you know, like, we have our active learning environment, and like, again, it's good to start in the higher ed vertical to try and design this. Yeah. We might be able to discuss about boardrooms and so forth if the standard goes an extra step into a more outside higher ed vertical. But how did you think of, like, okay, for a classroom environment, like, you nearly have to start off define a classroom?
Well, exactly, yeah. I mean, well, to start off with, the breadth of this is staggering, and I'm aware that a standard can't prescribe everything. So I was focused in my proposal on audio-visual aspects only. There are quite a large number of very good laws and standards governing the sizes of spaces. There's already definitions out there. This work is done and we can use it in the standard. But there's not that much on the audiovisual aspect of it, and especially within specifically higher education. There are laws already for secondary education and primary education. The Children and Families Act describes some more in detail.
So these would be UK laws.
UK laws, yes. Which has been my focus because I don't read German. I can't really.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Though I've been talking with the American associations over there about the ADA as well, which is a completely different.
Like, and I've spoken, of Mike, we've spoken about this as well. Like, okay, we have the ADA, the American Disabilities Act over there, and there would be European acts on, you know, the rights of a person with disabilities.
Yeah.
But it's so vague. There's nothing, as you say, there's nothing AV related in there. You have a couple of European acts regarding IT and websites and PDFs and readers and stuff like that. And I think that in itself, coming out, was the closest thing I've seen to someone describing the fact that it has to be the ability to read the document. You can't be putting up closed PDFs onto a website, for example. And and then of course, Greg, we have the Discus standard and the ISCAR standards, which no matter what, people are supposed to be adhering to. But our biggest problem is, right, if we get, the standard is on the pipeline, hopefully in the next 6 months, is it?
I'm hoping so. They're currently writing the terms of reference at AVIXA, and then it'll go through another proposal step, I believe, to be confirmed. And once the terms of reference will define the scope of the standard, and we'll get. Yeah.
But the beautiful thing is, like, you get it over into that stage, and it's going to be refreshed. Like, you can see the amount of times this is going to go through a refresh and version cycle.
Well, I mean, just talk about some of the practicalities here. One of the things that's opened the door for us is that we have AVIXA standards and then we have ANSI standards.
Yes.
And so
So let's break that down for our listeners. So the ANSI standards would be an internationally recognised.
Well, you hope that they're all internationally recognised. Some people are sniffy. Some people this side of the pond are sniffy about ANSI being an American standard. But in reality, they're internationally accepted. They're in English, which was a good starter for 10. But an AVIXA standards means that we can have all of the rigor, all of the methodologies that we have for developing it, but we don't have to go through the formal and audited processes that ANSI is there. And also it means that we can refresh them more regularly, because when we started as a standards organisation, and we became an ANSI accredited standards development organisation, SDO. You then apart from actually writing standards, you're effectively there's a management issue, because every X years you've either got to republish, rewrite, or retire the standard. So you've got that kind of loop to go through. I think that. Going to use that overused word now. What you've set off is a journey that people have got to go down, and you've got to start, and you've got to start somewhere. So I think that the thing that we take from writing standards is that you first of all got to define your terms of reference, your TOR, and that's a very useful process, because what happens is you're going through a sort of a filter process until you actually get to be able to decide what the product can be.
Yes.
And what you've referred to about there are existing standards out there, some of which that we can use and refer to, and those are what we call normative references. So that's a document that we can say that that's a reference material for that. Then others that you can use partially or refer to, and those are informative references. But the point that I make, because I use standards on a daily basis, it's part of my daily work, my consulting work, and so on, is that the thing to remember is that these are not laws.
And that's the problem.
And they're not laws, and so I think we're in the my view is we're in the era of standards 2.0. When your kid does the homework, they only get full mark for showing the workings, not for just going straight to the answer.
Yes.
And I think it's quite legitimate for people to use a standard and go, well, okay, our user case is a bit different, and then but by using the workings and referring to it, you might come to something that's left to field. But you've got to start somewhere, and it gives you some way of actually some sort of methodology and way of working and way of presenting how it is that you come to your conclusions.
But the problem we have here is, as you mentioned, it's not a legal requirement. So
which is a good thing.
Yeah.
I agree, actually. I completely agree. Having talked with the American universities, the laws over there with the ADA, it's very rigorous, it's very useful, and it creates a good level of work, but it very easily becomes a box-ticking exercise.
And this is the problem. Yeah.
Whereas a standard like this, I would hope people are invested in it when they come to it. They aren't ticking the box because there's no whip over their shoulder to tell them they should. There might be an incentive financially because you'll be competing with other spaces who are accredited or who do meet this standard. But that level of ticking a box to make sure you get past the checker won't be there in the same way.
But going on the finance approach, and we know that the budgets are really tight in higher ed, is this going to be something that they just go, okay, nice to have at the very end?
Well, that's actually kind of why I'm making it.
Yeah.
It was because I know how tight budgets are. I know how hard it is to get money from an institution, and to have an official backing in the form of a standard when you're making your business proposal for a space, when you're creating these designs, when you're talking to your consultants or your installers or whoever. If you come and you're like, look, all these other universities are keeping this standard. AVIXA says this standard is what's needed. If we're not at that standard, we're not competing. We're not on that level. And so I'm hoping that will give a bit more weight to the argument of budget.
That as well, that you could hold integrators to account. If they say, no, we're going to put this in, and then whichever way the economy goes.
I don't think it'll get driven by the integrators. To be honest, I think
you need this. I think it's tech managers to drive it.
Yeah, it's an iterative and a gradual process. I think that you'll start to see it being adapted into policies in a specific way, into strategy. But I think that the other thing is it gives you, for example, the tools to write a risk register. What are the risks that the organisation or the campus faces by not doing it? And also you used another word just now, which was competition. Universities are competing for places now. In the UK, there's you're seeing students now, or potential students, that really, with the cost of student loans and everything, really, deciding, well, do I really want to go through that?
That's interesting that's happening over in England. We're constantly filling numbers. So.
And so it can also be a device which universities can use to attract students. So I think that it can really play quite a 360-degree role in the way that campuses run and operate.
Well, with that in mind, they're looking to create more spaces for students. So a lot of universities at the moment are reaching out across the world and building satellite campuses in different places around the world. And another hope of this standard is that will help to unify and standardize these spaces outside. So you're bringing in students from around the world, and you want them to have an equitable experience with the people who are on site. So you want to be bringing this help. That's why AVIXA is so helpful with its global reach. And
I think that's what you're saying there, Lewis. It's like, okay, this might be one step towards an accessibility standard, but I can see there could be branches of this accessibility standard into different areas. If one is looking into audio and quality, people might, or define the disability, whether I came on going back on to the word the hidden disabilities, they shouldn't have to identify. So if they're not identifying, okay, a bit of voice lift or whatever. But I also believe if you're neurodiverse as a student, should you have to go onto campus? This is one of these things that I constantly harp on about. Is the environment uncomfortable? If it's uncomfortable, should there be more hybrid classes going on? Yeah. We have a problem with student accommodation. We have a problem with housing crisis over in Ireland. Yeah. This and our transport system, like even for me, and Greg knows where Dublin Airport is, and he knows that I'm in North County Dublin. It takes me an hour and a half to go on a public transport into work each day.
Yeah.
And then like the buses and the trains and everything are full.
Yep.
So therefore, like there was an example of a university on the south side of Dublin where the lecturer couldn't get car parking space because all the students are driving in because they're driving at long distances because of the housing crisis, and they had to do their class in the car from Zoom. So then we therefore have to create these environments, and we have to create these environments that go, okay, if this standard comes out, if the university goes, okay, we don't have the budget to run with correcting these rooms, it's sort of like the chicken and the egg. Well then, do we offer a better hybrid approach to doing our tuition for our students? Like, I know not every course can be done hybrid.
I did some strategy work with another London campus, and one of the outturns of that is really talking about modularity. So I think there are all kinds of ways that talking about accessibility, talking about equity, actually has a much broader reach in terms of how you think and the ambitions that you have for how you engage with students and teaching staff. Although teaching from a car is a bit of a new one.
Yeah.
So this is the thing that I wanted to define in the standard as well. Is that so you were saying about experience, user experience is what will drive the creation of the standard and how we'll define what it's about. And it's important to realise that the users aren't just the students. The users in this standard are also the educators, who are just as equally important in this as the students. So it's about finding a balance where the educators are comfortable teaching in whatever environment they're in that supports other people as well. That they are made, they are provided with the accessible features that they need to be able to teach, whilst also providing for other people's needs at the same time. So it's definitely complex. But
the one thing I'd throw in there with a mild note of cynicism is that the user experience, UX, gets a lot of lip service, but actually users are not talked to in general, and that there's a huge blank in terms of that knowledge. A colleague of mine I work with, Adam Banks, got called in to do some UX study on the campus I've been working with, and the results that come back from actually talking to the users come as a real bit of a shock to the assumptions that the stakeholders and managers have, because there's a huge slippage, huge gap between what the user experience really is and the assumptions that we make about it.
Well, and from us all working in AV and doing AV support in higher ed, my approach is they can put in the latest tech. If it's too complicated, they go to that GUI and user experience and they go, not turning on. Yeah. You've lost them the first day. For their first experience is the one that they're going to remember.
It's all about trust.
It's all about trust.
Yeah, but I also think that we're our own worst enemies, and because we're all technophiles. We're at this show now where there's squillions of quid's worth of euros worth of fancy equipment, and there'll be integrators going around going, well, I'd like to sell that to so and so, and it, from my point of view, you start with a completely technology agnostic point of view. I think that one specific thing that I see is, I don't wish to make enemies here, but this people thinking interactive flat panels are going to be the answer to someone's prayers, and I find those very ableist devices in practice. But I mean, if you actually go through, it's one of my well-worn cliches, but if you actually go through what the use case is and what's actually needed, it might actually be that a flip chart with a couple of marker pens is actually what's needed with maybe a webcam on it. It's actually just to start with without any preconceptions.
Exactly. Like, you don't need all the tech in the room, but getting back to the basic requirements of the standard is like, you should be able to walk into a room and everyone hear you. I remember doing a podcast with Chris on accessibility at one stage. Just like, people like, hands up how many times you hear this in AV support and you're doing a live event. Can everyone hear me from the back? Hand up if you can't hear me. You know, and like we have lecture theatres
If you
on
need
campus.
to ask.
You know, we have lecture theatres that are 300 plus people environments, right? And if, again, it's sometimes taking it back to the staff member and the lecturer. If they can't hear a question at the back row that a student's asking, well, the same happens the other way too. You know, so
And they might as well be back in their digs on their laptop.
Yeah.
But
And
there's a lot of resources for helping with this already out there, like speech intelligibility index will be a normative reference in the standard as it goes forward. There are some really useful pieces of work to define all of these little areas. With like sound is very important. You've got stuff for sightline, you've got stuff for discast, and once we get this standard in place, it will combine all of these into a unified design principle, where accessibility is considered in the inception of the design. That's the most important part, is that it's considered from the start, that it's thought about, like you say, without any preconceptions, that the whole thing moves along the rails in the right direction from the very beginning, and we don't have any sharp left turns at the end where the budget gets spent on insane text to make it work when it doesn't already work from the beginning.
It is going to be great if you can just take out a page and go, right, well, for proper voice lift, it needs to be
this much.
This much.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you say sound is important. I say sound is, now, you feel free to argue with me, sound is more important than the actual visuals in the end of it.
That's exactly my mantra. I mean, particularly on hybrid. I mean, if the video fails, it's a problem. If the audio fails, it's complete. You know, it's a complete bloody disaster. But also, you know, my observation in general, and I'm not talking about higher ed, is the standard of audio that people are used to is awful.
It is.
And I think, you know, and I just think that the problem is because it's not a pure technology thing. It involves acoustics and room design and all that kind of thing. It's kind of intractable. So because no one person can take responsibility for it, it drops down the gap. But in general, I think the quality of audio experience is absolutely awful.
And it's good that when we talk about technology, okay, and we're not naming any products, but like the way things are going now with Auracast and being able to use your own devices or your own headsets, you're not identifying, right?
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing is, as AV technicians, right, the amount of times I've got a phone call or something, and it's usually from higher ed management saying, oh, that room, Justin, is the TV loop working in that room? I have no means of testing it.
Yeah.
Are you the same?
Well, this is actually what started me on this.
Okay.
So I was going around the T-loops.
I'm glad I notated it all.
I was going around the T-loops in my campus. I was a technician at the time, and I was trying to test them all. And I was listening to the quality of them. I was like, this is awful. This is really bad. So I started looking into Auracast as it was coming out and getting very involved in that, which is very exciting. But one of the things that it showed me in this is that an accessible design is not just accessible for people with the need for accessibility.
Yes.
It's accessible for everybody.
Yes.
It makes it easier to teach, easier to learn for absolutely everybody.
Especially with Auracast, if the audio is poor, the ability to adjust it to a certain person is incredible.
It's really
or
useful.
if you need to test it as an AV technician, connecting to it with a set of headphones, and it's going to make it so much easier of the testing and going, yes, it is actually working. It's not, I can go back to my
instead of relying on some hearing loop testing box that rattles as you move. There are some good ones out there. There are some useful pieces of technology, but if we can move to a better starting point, then it'll all.
But not only that, when we have our poor acoustic rooms, you're nearly getting to the stage where you go, okay, well, at least we're putting the onus back on the students, like bring their own devices, bring their own headphones. Because we've had lecture theatres on our campus, right, where the voice lift isn't there. They're hoping to get the budget for it and so forth, right? But some of the comments coming back is like, oh, well, the students are being a bit disruptive. Students get disruptive when they can't hear the lecturer talking at the front of the room. This is,
Yeah, well, I mean, if you like, that kind of typifies the one of the things with fault finding in general. People see the symptom as the fault rather than which isn't necessarily the same thing as what's causing it.
Yes, yeah. Now, you're getting the standard over the line.
Yes.
Was it only really you, or did you get a team with yourselves?
No, pretty much just me for the starting block. It was, like I say, it was composing an environmental scan, looking at all the laws in the UK, looking at all of these DISCAS standards, all of the other standards that exist. And there's a couple of amazing frameworks for higher education through the academic community that have all been brought in. It's gathering what I can see, what I know about, and presenting it to AVIXA with, look at all this work. Look at what's out there. Let's do something with it. Let's focus it, and let's, set a standard. Exactly.
Next steps, once it's over the line, is really trying to promote this. So have you thought it on?
Yeah.
Well, this
here we are.
hopefully. Yeah.
There's been amazing support from the higher ed community so far. I've been with SCOMS and LTSMG and ETC, who are all higher education.
So ETC, you were over in Australia?
No, that's ATM.
ATM, sorry.
I was in America for their ETC conference.
Yes,
I was talking to them about their work, and they all love it. They were all very supportive of it. All of the universities I've talked to want this to happen. Really want this to happen. Yeah. So, I mean, I'll keep talking about it until people are bored of me. But the more traction it has in the industry, the more
and please
momentum
God,
it's going to get.
it can spread its wings a bit further and become more open to other verticals. And
well, I mean, you've done an incredible job of work so far. So I just want to say that in my out loud voice here, but. The fact remains, the standard is step one, and then sort of promulgating, evangelizing, getting it out there is step two. It then moves out into the sort of the wider AVIXA, education and certification side of things. But I think it's a very positive and actually quite an indicative thing that this initiative has come from higher ed. I think that you were talking about. What that would mean for meeting rooms, for example. I mean, for what it's worth, and I'm not going to speak, make any big predictions. For what it's worth, I would have thought that whatever you come up with for higher ed, that meeting rooms would be a version of that. You're going to think of it in a much more holistic way, in a much more thorough way. So I think people will be able to take what they need for it.
Absolutely. Now, if people want to get involved with you, now I know you're reaching out to a lot of universities, but if people want to get involved, what's the best way of doing so? Contact you on LinkedIn? Or?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to talk about it, they can contact me on LinkedIn 100%. We're waiting on the terms of reference to be finished by AVIXA, and after that I believe there'll be much more input, and I'll be reaching out to a bunch of different stakeholders who will be able to provide that feedback, provide that perspective that is missing. And the whole point of this is it's a collaborative effort by the industry to create a standard. And we'll listen to everybody and we'll make it work for everybody.
The one thing I'd add in there is that as we get close to the finishing line, a draft will then go out for review.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Now, when we do an ANSI standard, that's a very prescriptive process, but for AVIXA, we can be much more flexible. So if people are interested in this, that is an opportunity for people to really engage. We've just done what we thought, what should have been a very straightforward refresh of DISCAS to allow for hybrid screen layouts, and some really interesting stuff came back in the feedback. So that bit there is kind of is a practical step, and that in my experience means that each time whatever the product that we've got will be improved at least slightly as part of that process.
I think it's fantastic and I felt that vibe as well before you really took the bull by the horns. The manufacturers are so keen on this. Once you get the standard out there, you will see the manufacturers going, oh yeah, well, we're trying to comply, and look, we've looked at this, and giving away solutions. Hopefully we'll be back here in a couple of years' time at IC, and we will see the fact that people are giving demos in their booths with stuff that they can refer to this accessibility standard. You know, it's so vitally important. You've done a great job on it, Lewis. Greg, thank you as always for joining us as well.
Thank you for
Where can
asking
people get a hold of you if they want to ask you consultancy questions or anything
the shortest email address for me is greg@gjconsult.co.uk.
And Lewis, on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, or you can email me the university address, which is lewis.1.shevelan@kcl.ac.uk. We might have to put that on an underlay.
On an underlay as well.
Because the spelling is something else.
That's a long email address,
Yeah,
you know. But again, LinkedIn is probably the best way of
LinkedIn would be the best way for sure.
finding you. Your university has been super supportive as well.
Incredibly supportive. Their development stuff is really useful.
Awesome.
Yeah, King's College done some really amazing stuff. Yeah.
Well, thank you both guys for joining us. Thanks to Midwich AV on Air for hosting this podcast. This is all from the All Things TechIE Podcast. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Tell your friends about this accessibility standard because it's important to all three of us, and hopefully it's important to your university too.